Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today we are going to meditate on the full moon taking place in the sign of Capricorn. I think I have a few kind of mystical insights that may help us appreciate the sign of Capricorn and perhaps understand its symbolism at a deeper level, which I think can really help us when it comes to a full moon like this, and also a year in which the natural binary of Cancer and Capricorn is going to be activated by Jupiter's presence in Cancer. There's a way in which anytime a planet is active in one sign for a long period of time, the natural opposite tendency that exists in the other sign is brought out. That's just the way that astrology works. So I think this will be useful on a few different levels. On that note, before we get into it, remember to like and subscribe. I love hearing your stories as you connect to these episodes. I'd love to hear how you're making those connections with the symbols. If you ever have a story to share with a transit, use the hashtag grabbed, or email us your story, grabbed@nightlightastrology.com. Just mention the transit and then tell us the story that goes with the transit as concisely as you can. You can find transcripts of any of these daily talks on my website, nightlightastrology.com. When you are over there, I have a new webinar this Thursday night on the 9th house. Go to the events page, click on live talks. Thursday night, I'm giving a talk on the 9th house called Temple of the Sun God, Enlightenment, Good Karma. Why did Indian astrologers believe that some of our best karma was contained in this house? That will be a really interesting part of this talk on Thursday night. If you can't attend the live webinar, you get the link when you register, but if you can't attend live, you get the recording and replay afterward. You'll see that the rest of my talks for the calendar year are now scheduled, and you can register for any of them and receive the replay, of course, like this talk if you can't make it live. All right. Well, on that note, let's now turn our attention to the real-time clock so that we can just briefly highlight this full moon in Capricorn before getting into the symbolism. So Thursday, July 10th, and we see a full moon in Capricorn. So it's coming through late afternoon Central Time here in Minnesota, around the 18th degree of Capricorn. So you could always take a look at things that you have in your chart around those middle degrees of Capricorn, or the cardinal signs in general might be a little bit more active for you if so. But what I want to do today is simply reflect on some of the elements of the sign of Capricorn on an archetypal level that may slip underneath the radar at times. And for me, I like to teach this way because a lot of the times when we're processing astrology, the deeper that we understand signs, planets, combinations, aspects, the more likely we are to actually recognize the presence of these symbols and themes, topics, and timelines as they pass through. One of the things that I find really disappointing about astrology is if it gets too mired down. I mean, there's a level where astrology is sort of, like Venus and Pluto get together. It's sort of like, okay, love, we're going to go through some intense subterranean Plutonian events when Venus and Pluto get together. And there's something very like standard about that we all have recognized or been through. But we don't want to just live in the textbook line 1A portion of the astrological symbols. We want to go deeper so that we can recognize some of the more nuanced and subtle ways in which things are showing up. So I think there's always value in trying to dive a little bit deeper into signs, planets, houses, etc. In fact, as an astrologer, I will spend most of my own ongoing time learning and studying as an astrologer each year by going into basic things in new ways or from a different angle, or reading what someone that I find interesting has to say about something, and learning something brand new about a house or a sign. Anyway, so these, I hope, will be 3 fresh ways of thinking about Capricorn. Let me just make sure I got my notes here. As you guys know who watch my channel, I lost all of my content for this week, and I'm reproducing a week's worth of content in a very short amount of time. So some of these are a little condensed, and if I look or sound sort of out of sorts or scattered, it's because I feel incredibly rushed and sort of overwhelmed by the situation, honestly. So Anyway, but here we are. We make the best of things and just move along like a good Capricorn would tell us to do, right? All right. Well, the first thing that comes to my mind when we're thinking about a full moon in Capricorn, what is important for us to know about this sign? One is that the sign, for ancient mystics who practiced astrology, the sign contained this interesting elemental dichotomy. Even though we call Capricorn an earth sign, the constellation image of the sea goat contained this dichotomy between spirit or water and materiality or earth. Now, the reason that in this image water is associated with spirit is a little bit complex. We don't typically think of water as spirit. We tend to think of spirit as something maybe more fiery or disembodied, even as a spark of pure consciousness. Sometimes we think of spirit like that. So making the association between spirit and water may not be intuitive for us, but let me try to explain it. Remember that the polar opposite sign of Cancer was called the gateway of mankind. It's at this time of year when the sun has reached the summer solstice, it's reached its highest point in the sky. From that point on, the sun will gradually sink down to the earth. That descent of the light from a high point down to the earth was thought of in Platonic, Neoplatonic philosophy as the descent of spirit into matter. And in that original moment of creation, this is why, by the way, Cancer is on the ascendant of the Thema Mundi, the ancient birth chart of the cosmos. From that descent of the light down into the earth, the original appearance of life as the cosmos itself and beings within it was conceptualized as a watery soup, just like the womb. If you ever saw, Darren Aronofsky's Tree of Life, it's like this, at the beginning of creation is just this kind of cosmic soup. And often we hear that too, like in the beginning, there was just water, or even in Genesis, right? So the sign of Cancer, the polar opposite sign that begins the initiation of the cosmos itself in the ancient astrological mythology, is conceptualized as a watery beginning. Water is something like the undifferentiated nature of pure consciousness or spirit or source made manifest. So water elementally was associated with the transcendent source that is God or divinity or consciousness itself, beingness itself. Its first appearance in the world is water. And that is the primordial floodgates of Cancer, where Jupiter is exalted, where Jupiter will be in Cancer for the next year. So what's really interesting is the way that Capricorn relates us to this source. Capricorn's beginning as the bottom half of the sea goat is a fish, is a reference to the descent of spirit into matter that is the source of creation in the opposite sign of Cancer. Not unconnected, right? The sign of Capricorn is called the gateway of the gods. And while the bottom half of Capricorn is a fish, pulling us back to the primordial womb of creation itself, to the origin of life, to source, to womb, to spirit, we move out to the upper half of the sea goat, which is a land-based animal. And not just that, but a land-based animal that is a famous escape artist that can climb up and out of anything that contains it, and that is notorious for climbing steep cliffs, mountain faces, and is kind of like a ladder climber. So that juxtaposition between the spirit womb waters of creation in the fish's tail and the ascending creature of the goat on top was a duality present in the sign of Capricorn that was considered and literally called enigmatic, mysterious. The reason that it is called enigmatic is what I want to get to next. So, this duality of earth and spirit, how can we understand it? Well, in the sign of Cancer, it's so much about midwifing creation, the mother and the child, nurturance, devotion, care, safety, bondedness, attachment, all of the things that are a feature, a hallmark of being alive, coming into life, at least for, like mammals, for example, or humans, and fostering a sense of safety, connection, aliveness, being fed, breast milk, being at the breast of creation. This is Cancer. Welcome to life, my child. The manifest cosmos, the gateway of mankind. That's Cancer. No wonder Jupiter's exalted there, right? So, in the sign of Capricorn, what's interesting is that it's a picture rather of spirit descending into matter, of spirit ascending out of matter. It's a kind of inverted image of the process of birth. It has to do, not surprisingly ruled by Saturn, co-ruled in its exaltation by Mars, with the process of ascent out of matter, spirit ascending and rising back out of creation, which happens through the process of leaving the body in death, but also happens through the process of enlightenment. Climbing out of the world requires a recognition of the spirit that's encased in matter and a deliberate attempt on behalf of the soul entrapped in matter to escape, to get out of it. So it's a very fascinating sign. And most of us, that probably rubs us the wrong way. I'm a Cancer sun, Mercury in Cancer. Like I don't want to hate the world. I don't want to look upon it with cynical eyes. I don't want to look at the world and say, oh, I got to get out of here, this bad, terrible place. But this duality, this enigmatic duality of earth and spirit, can be two things at once. This is always a lesson with all of the signs of the zodiac. There's always a tension of opposites between opposite signs that we have to learn how to hold rather than collapse into binary opposition with. So in Cancer, we have, this is a place worth being. This is the valley of life. You're at the breast, you're at the mother. This world is sacred. It's animate, it's alive, it's embodied, it's sacred, it's beautiful to be here. Your body is beautiful. Being an embodied soul, you're not meant to bypass or try to get out of here. You're here to be here. Just like Krishna tells Arjuna on the field of Dharma, you can't run off to a cave to try to escape this place. Got to be here, right on the battlefield of life. Cancer, the all-embracing mother, says, embrace life. Capricorn, little different. With Capricorn, it's the hard, brutal reality that you can get so ensconced in matter, in materiality, that you can fall under the spell of illusion. You can get intoxicated by the material energy. You can get lost in it. You can get confused. You can lose yourself. And so there is a path, an upward path, a path of transcendence, a path that has to work incrementally, one step at a time, to overcome the limitations, Saturn ruled sign, right? The limitations of the material world, the limitations of a world that will end in death. So what are you living for that goes beyond death? This is Capricorn, the gateway of the gods, where the sun will climb all the way back up from this basement of the solar year, back up toward Cancer, the source. So if the source descends into matter, it also ascends back out of matter. The process of transmigration was taken as a basic feature of life by ancient mystics who practiced astrology. Transmigration means that, yes, you're meant to be here, but also there is a path that goes beyond this world, maybe into other realms, other planes, other dimensions, but it goes beyond. It's not just here. Here is good. Here is not bad. Here is not evil. But there is more. What is the path you're taking up and out of this world? This is, some of us love this world so much. It's painful. It feels judgy, feels really cynical to look at the world that way. Believe me, I get it. I have a Capricorn moon, Cancer sun. I feel torn between these two all the time. But that duality of earth and spirit was considered an enigmatic part of Capricorn. And one of the reasons that Capricorn is actually an incredibly mystical and transcendental sign, it is not surprising that Saturn, the ruler of Capricorn, was a planet that sat at the edge of the visible cosmos, demarcating the boundary between the world and something transcendent. It is a Saturnian reality to accept the limitations of the body, impermanence, suffering, death, decay, and to say there's something more, there's something beyond this. Even as we accept these limitations, we come to terms with them, they sober us, and then we say, okay, well, while I'm here, what am I aiming toward that's of transcendent value? That's a Saturnian realization. That's a Capricornian kind of realization. Now, pervert any of this, right? And the ascent out of the entanglement of the world, the difficulty of the world, the harshness, the impermanence, the pain, the suffering, we say to ourselves, well, rather than climbing a mountain of spiritual transcendence, which has to do with finding my heart, locating my spirit soul, learning to be identified with my source, with pure consciousness, whatever we want to call it, rather than taking to that path, I think, well, you know how I can get through this world that is often so difficult? My transcendental value can be money or power or wealth or fame or prestige or mastery. And so with a sort of perverted vision of transcendence, Capricorns can go out and climb the mountain of those goals and ambitions, thinking that those are the things that will help them, like a goat, escape the pen. But it doesn't. It only entangles us, which is why Capricorn and the goat often associated with the devil, right? The devil in the tarot, the devil as an archetype, because often the things that we pursue are in the name of transcendence are going to be the things that continue to ensnare us because we get mixed up. That's just like part of the world. Hexagram 24 in the I Ching is one of my favorites of all time. It is called Return. And if you know the I Ching, they're 64 hexagrams, 6-lined figures. The lines are either yin or yang, and they're in different combinations. The yin and yang lines come together to depict very specific interactions of heaven and earth and of yin and yang. And those interactions in each hexagram describe situations and offer wisdom for how to approach or work through the tension of opposites that is unique and always moving and different in each situation. It is easily one of my favorite philosophical and like divinatory traditions on the planet. And I've studied a bunch of them. This is just one that kind of always just kind of spoke my name to me. I just feel like I'm at home in it. Always learning. It's vast. So I'm not like the world's biggest expert, but one thing that hexagram 24 stands for, it is actually the hexagram associated with the winter solstice, the degree of that starts our Capricorn season from the Northern Hemisphere standpoint. That the hexagram number 24, it says at the bottom, at the start, there's one line of yang, spirit, transcendence, yang, pushing upward against 5 lines of yin. Here we have the picture of light at the very basement of the year going to rise all the way up out of the darkness depicted by the 5 lines of yin. And the advice that it has is really interesting to me. Let me just read this to you. The judgment reads, return success. Going out and coming in without error. Friends come without blame. The way comes back on its own. 7 days you return, advantageous to have a direction. It's one of the things I love about this hexagram is it says the light is returning. So if you've been in a period of, like, let me give you an example that's thoroughly Capricornian, hitting rock bottom. As someone who faced addiction in my early 20s, there was a rock bottom moment, and followed by that, a very gradual return of the light. That recognition, I've lost my way. I'm lost in the soup of material life. I have become addicted to a substance that I was using because I thought it would help me with the pain and suffering and kind of hard, harsh, depressing realities of life that I was dealing with, but it didn't. It only made it worse. Now it's gotten so bad that I've hit a rock bottom. That rock bottom, many, many, many people who've been through 12-step programs describe as the beginning of the return of light. That's hexagram 24. Hexagram 24 says there's nowhere to go but up. But at this moment, meditate very deeply on what that image of up is all about. In the 12-step program, we take it one day at a time, for example. I go to Al-Anon, one day at a time. One day at a time is a recognition that it's an arduous path and it's very easy to fall back down. And our vision has to be set on something of transcendental value. I can't do this on my own, which is fundamentally a way of saying, I rely on a higher power. I rely on grace. I rely on faith. I rely on my guides. I rely on my higher self, my higher power, whatever that might be. And through my reliance upon that thing, one day at a time, I work my way toward the light, away from the addiction. Now that's a path of recovery. That's a 12-step program, but that is like a universal template present in so many spiritual traditions that talk about the dark night of the soul, like hexagram 24, that talk about the importance of when you hit a rock bottom, when you hit a really difficult space, what do you fixate on that starts the path of moving out, of escape, of transcendence, of upward movement, of elevation? Capricorn is a very mystical sign insofar as if the vision is right, it is a sign that utilizes the earth and the substance of life and grit and determination to move toward things of transcendent value. Earth does not mean that there can be no interest in things that are, beyond earth. In fact, Capricorn is a sign that says, like, the only way that I attain something of a spiritual nature is by dealing with my earthly nature with a transcendent goal in mind, one day at a time, one step at a time, one material, difficult, real day at a time. Such an incrementalist in that respect, so steady, so persistent, so focused, so determined. God forbid we use the word disciplined, but it's true. So anyway, all right. So this hexagram 24, another way of thinking about rising from the depths. If you hit a bottom, depression, angst, sorrow, and these rock bottoms are hard. Many of us listening know what I'm talking about. And you say to yourself, I'm never going to be here again. And I'm going to overcome these adverse circumstances through wealth, through prestige, through popularity, through whatever. Things that don't, and many of us try to cope with the difficulties of the world by becoming high achievers in things that do not last, that do not carry actual soul value. It's tragic, but it's part of how we learn too. I have a feeling, just based on this lifetime, that I've probably spent many lifetimes refining or developing different things that I thought would grant me some sense of happiness that eventually I couldn't take with me. I just feel that way deep down somewhere. There's something in this lifetime, at least for me, where it's been a little bit easier like progressively as my life has gone on to say, this is substantive. This is worth the time, the energy, the effort. Like when I started realizing I loved astrology, it was so clearly different than anything else I had ever tried to be good at, because I was interested in it, or I thought, well, I could make a career for myself out of that. For whatever reason, astrology spoke to me as something that had this transcendental value to it. It was not just something I loved or wanted to get good at. It was something that I loved even more than I wanted to get good at it. And I think that hexagram 24 and the sign of Capricorn is a reminder. If you're going to climb that mountain, make sure that what's at the top is soul rich. You know what I mean? It has transcendent value. All right, I'm going to close with 5 films been doing this, been kind of fun. These 5 films, to me, in no particular order, are they really nicely represent Capricornian mythology. So the first one, another Darren Aronofsky film, is called The Fountain. What I love about this film is that it's about the pursuit of something divine and of immortal value, but there's also a real shadow to the way in which that is approached. The tree of life, right? The fountain of youth. When we pursue things of an eternal value, but with selfish motives, it's problematic. I could go on about that because I grew up a preacher's kid and saw my father go through some of this. It happens. It's part of life. Anyway, The Fountain, Darren Aronofsky. Check out that movie if you want a really good Capricornian mythology, the pursuit of something transcendent and the shadows involved with that pursuit. Another movie that's basically the same archetype, in my opinion, but a little bit more like fun and poppy, is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Sean Connery is his dad and him go in search of the Holy Grail, but the Nazis are also pursuing it. Very different reasons for pursuing something of eternal value. That is the shadow of Capricorn. Now, Lord of the Rings, Return of the King especially, but Lord of the Rings, great Capricornian story. Frodo has to overcome the weight of worldly power. Here is an emblem in the Ring of Power that represents every possible Capricornian, Pluto and Capricorn. If Pluto and Capricorn could be put into a symbol, it would be like the corrosive power contained in that master ring. So Frodo, from a humble beginning, has to carry it all the way up a mountain and destroy it, and not be corrupted by the influence to hold it or possess it. That's a Capricornian myth. Not surprisingly, at the end of that myth, his encounter with the weight of that journey has granted him passage from the elves to an immortal realm. Right? That's super Capricornian. J.R.R. Tolkien, of course, had the sun in Capricorn. Now, The Secret of Kells, it's an animated film. I showed my girls this movie. They really liked it. Again, it's about something sacred and sort of protecting it, holding it, keeping it for the right reasons, people who desire it for the wrong reasons. Very monastic, very mystical, very creative, but also what persists through time as something of transcendent value. And there's a lot in the Book of Kells that has to do with that value, and also people that are trying to take it for less than, like selfish motives. Great movie, super Capricornian movie. Check that one out. 2001: A Space Odyssey came out well before I was born. Stanley Kubrick movie. It's great. It really calls into question what is the transcendent? Where are we aiming ourselves as a species in terms of achieving some kind of divine transcendent form? And there's an exploration of the shadow of desiring to be something transcendent. These are, again, this like Sauron is like everything, the devil card, the dark Capricorn, like that's Sauron, the powers of the world, the power of aiming towards something transcendent. But when that transcendent thing is power, Finally, one that I saw rather recently, just like a year or two ago, I saw this movie called The Green Knight. It's an Arthurian kind of, it's Arthurian, but I don't think it's the exact same as an Arthurian tale. It's kind of like riffing off from an Arthurian tale, but it is about tests of character, morality, willpower, incremental progress through trials and challenges, with a focus on dealing with the dark side of ambition and with integrity. What does it mean to hold to a transcendent quest with integrity? Really good stuff in The Green Knight as well. Now, to me, how we tie all of this together with a full moon in Capricorn is, you know, um, I think it's an interesting thing to consider right now, specifically because Jupiter is in the sign of Cancer. So that means for the next year, the dichotomy between the life that's worth living, the life that's worth getting enmeshed in the world over, having kids or falling in love or building a business or, steeping yourself in a people or a culture, a family, races and religions. Like, this world is meant to be lived and to be in the midst of. However, the kind of natural, subtle polar opposite present throughout a year where Jupiter is in Cancer is the truth of needing a transcendent function, needing a transcendent focus, not getting so attached and enmeshed in the world, soft and sweet as it may be, that we fall asleep in the milk. And we forget that if we don't stay awake, if we don't stay aware, there will be a rock bottom. And then that rock bottom will necessitate a kind of hard, arduous journey back to the light. Jupiter in Cancer is sort of like the milky soup. It's so beautiful. It's so fertile. It's so rich. It can also be a little easy to fall asleep within. I'll never forget, while my wife was pregnant with both of our kids, but especially the first one, and even the first little chapters of life, so sweet. Now, in some ways, the sweetness is still there, but there's this part of parenting, and this is so much a part of the Capricorn Cancer axis, where we have to stay aware of the traps of the world that we've seen and experienced and gotten lost in. Addiction for me, how do we make sure that our girls have some tools in their backpack to climb the mountain, to Mount Doom, to not get tempted by the ring, to search for the grail, but what's the right way to do that? And to keep a transcendent focus, but to not bypass the living of life. Like, those tensions, teaching kids how to be of this world, be in this world, but not of it. That's the phrase, I think. Be in this world, love this world, but have a transcendental focus that's here as well. How do you carry that tension? So much of parenting is like that. And it's often typically represented by the mom who says, I love you, and the dad that says something like, life is hard and you got to work. And, it's like, so like stereotypical. I think at a deeper level, a moon cycle like this one, and a year ahead where Jupiter in Cancer will naturally bring up the Capricornian counterpoint, is a year in which we can carry that tension ourselves. Let's be here. Let's make it sweet. Let's make it connected. Let's care for one another. Let's be devoted. Let's care for each other and nature, and be in this beautiful mess together. At the same time, let's not forget that this is a sobering valley. Sometimes the valley of tears and suffering. Death and mortality are real. I'm a soul migrating through this place. Let's keep that kind of Capricornian sacred mission in mind as well. Anyway, I hope that these musings were useful. I can't say enough that this week, just like reproducing everything that I already did once, has been a little draining, and I just don't feel myself making the content, but I hope that this conveyed something of value despite that. It really is my hope. And thank you again, everyone, for being so patient and understanding. And we will see you again tomorrow. Bye, everyone.